I never thought a phone call at 3:15 on a Tuesday afternoon would shatter my daughter's world. But there I was, standing in my kitchen still holding a dish towel, listening to Principal Martinez explain why my honor roll student wouldn't be walking into her senior prom. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice carrying that rehearsed tone administrators use when they're about to ruin someone's day. "Due to recent budget constraints and some complaints from other parents, we've had to make some difficult decisions about prom attendance. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." The words that came next hit me like ice water. Emma's scholarship status doesn't cover the additional fees we've implemented, and frankly, some families have expressed concerns about maintaining certain standards for this particular event. Let me take you back to the beginning, because what happened next wasn't just about a teenage girl missing her prom. It was about a mother learning exactly how far some people will go to keep others in their place, and how sometimes the universe has a funny way of proving them wrong. Emma had been counting down the days to prom since September. Not because she was obsessed with fairy tale endings or princess fantasies, but because she'd worked 3 jobs to save enough money for her dress, shoes, and ticket. While other kids spent their weekends at the mall or hanging out at friends' houses, Emma was either stocking shelves at Murphy's Corner Store, tutoring elementary kids in math, or helping Mrs. Chen with her weekend catering business. Every dollar went toward 2 things: college applications and prom night. My daughter inherited my stubbornness and her father's heart. David passed away when Emma was 12, leaving us with medical bills that turned our comfortable middle-class life into a careful balancing act of necessities and dreams deferred. But Emma never complained. She threw herself into school, maintained a 4.0 GPA, and somehow managed to stay optimistic about everything. When she got the partial academic scholarship to Westfield Academy, the private school across town, I cried in the grocery store parking lot. Not because I was sad, but because finally, something good was happening for my girl. Westfield Academy wasn't like the public school in our neighborhood. The campus looked like something out of a college, brochure with manicured lawns, actual art hanging in the hallways, and teachers who knew every student's name. The kids drove cars that cost more than I made in 6 months, and their parents had titles like CEO and managing partner. But Emma fit in academically. Her teachers loved her, she made friends, and for 2 years, everything seemed perfect. The problems started small. Little comments from other parents during school events. "Oh, you're Emma's mother. How nice that she's here on scholarship." Smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Invitations to study groups that somehow got lost. Birthday? Parties that happened without her knowledge. Emma brushed it off, said she was too busy for parties anyway. But I saw how it wore on her. I watched my confident, brilliant daughter start second-guessing herself, wondering if she belonged anywhere. Then came junior year and the formation of what I secretly called the Westfield Mafia. Linda Blackwood, whose husband owned half the commercial real estate in the city, somehow became the unofficial queen of the parent association. She had perfectly styled blonde hair, designer handbags for every occasion, and the kind of smile that could cut glass when she wanted it to. Behind her stood Margaret Powell, whose daughter Sophia had been competing with Emma for valedictorian since freshman year, and Janet Morrison, who never spoke above a whisper but somehow always managed to make the most cutting remarks. These women turned parent involvement into an art form. They organized fundraisers, planned school events, and gradually positioned themselves as the voices that mattered when decisions needed to be made. And slowly, systematically, they began making it clear that some families belonged more than others. It started with the spring formal committee. Emma had volunteered to help with decorations. Excited to contribute her artistic skills, Linda Blackwood pulled me aside after the meeting and explained, ever so sweetly, that they'd decided to go with a professional decorator instead. "We just want everything to be perfect, you understand. This event reflects on all of us." The Message was clear. Emma's help wasn't the right kind of help. Then there was the college counseling incident. Emma had an appointment with Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor, to discuss her early admission applications to several prestigious universities. When she arrived, she found Margaret Powell and her daughter already in the office. "Oh, Mrs. Rodriguez said, looking flustered. "I'm so sorry, Emma. There's been a scheduling mix-up. Could we reschedule for next week?" Emma later found out that Margaret had requested an emergency meeting to discuss Sophia's chances of getting into the same schools Emma was applying to. The appointment was never rescheduled, and Emma ended up navigating the entire college application process on her own. But the real campaign began during senior year. Emma had been selected for the National Merit Scholarship Semi-Finalist Program, an honor that would virtually guarantee her admission to any college she wanted. The announcement was made during the weekly assembly, and I watched from the parent section as my daughter walked across that stage, her face glowing with pride and possibility. The applause was polite, but restrained. Later, in the parking lot, I overheard Linda Blackwood talking to a group of mothers near her silver Mercedes. "It's just such a shame," she was saying, shaking her head with practiced concern, "when these special programs lower their standards. I mean, we all want diversity, but at what cost to real merit?" The other women nodded solemnly, as if they were discussing a tragic decline in educational values rather than trying to diminish a 17-year-old girl's achievement. That's when I realized we were fighting more than just social awkwardness or petty jealousy. We were up against something deliberate and calculated, a system designed to put us in our place and keep us there. Emma tried to ignore it, focusing on her studies and her part-time jobs. She'd come home exhausted but determined, spreading homework across our small kitchen table, turning down invitations to movies or dinner because she couldn't afford them, and was too proud to let anyone else pay. She was building something for herself, creating a future through sheer force of will and intelligence. And that, I think, is what scared them most. The prom announcement came in February. Emma had been looking forward to it since the beginning of senior year, not because she was boy crazy or obsessed with being prom queen, but because it represented something bigger. It was proof that she belonged, that she'd made it through 4 years at Westfield Academy and earned her place among her classmates. She'd saved enough money to buy a beautiful navy blue dress from a consignment shop, shoes that actually matched, and even managed to set aside funds for professional photos. She'd been asked to prom by Marcus Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew, who attended the public art school downtown. Marcus was sweet, talented, and completely unimpressed by Westfield's social hierarchy. He played guitar, wrote poetry, and treated Emma like she was the most interesting person in any room. They weren't dating seriously, just good friends who enjoyed each other's company, but he was exactly the kind of date who would make prom fun rather than stressful. Everything was perfect until the phone call. I stood in my kitchen that Tuesday afternoon, listening to Principal Martinez explain the new additional fees that had been implemented for prom attendance. $50 for enhanced security, $75 for upgraded venue decorations, $100 for professional photography packages that were now mandatory, and a final administrative fee of $85 to cover what she vaguely described as event coordination and oversight. $310 in addition to the $75 ticket Emma had already purchased. "I understand. This is short notice," Principal Martinez continued, her voice carrying the kind of artificial sympathy that made my teeth ache. "But the parent committee felt these upgrades were necessary to ensure the event meets Westfield's standards of excellence." The parent committee, Linda Blackwood's committee. "And if a student can't pay these additional fees?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Unfortunately, we can't make exceptions. It wouldn't be fair to the families who are able to contribute to the full experience." I hung up the phone and stood there for a long moment, processing what had just happened. They'd priced us out. Deliberately, calculatedly, systematically. And they'd done it 6 weeks before prom. Too late for Emma to find another job or save more money. Too late for me to pick up extra shifts without jeopardizing my own job security. When Emma came home from school that afternoon, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the notice I'd found in her backpack outlining all the new fees. She took one look at my face and knew. "How much?" she asked quietly. $310, I said. "On top of what you already paid." She sat down across from me, her backpack sliding off her shoulder onto the floor. For a moment, she just stared at her hands. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Then she looked up, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice was steady. "It's okay, Mom. It's just a dance." But it wasn't just a dance, and we both knew it. It was 4 years of proving she belonged, 4 years of working, twice as hard as everyone else, 4 years of maintaining perfect grades and perfect behavior and perfect gratitude for the opportunity to attend their perfect school. And now, 6 weeks before graduation, they were telling her she didn't belong, after all. That night, I called the school and asked to speak with Linda Blackwood. She was gracious and understanding, her voice dripping with the kind of false concern that fooled no one. "Oh, Sarah," she sighed, "I wish there was something we could do, but you understand how these events work. We simply can't have different standards for different families. It sends the wrong message to the children." "What message is that exactly?" I asked. "Well," she paused delicately, "that some people deserve special treatment. We're trying to teach our children about fairness and personal responsibility." Personal responsibility, as if my daughter hadn't been personally responsible for every grade, every achievement, every moment of success she'd earned at their school. "And the timing of these fees?" I pressed. 6 weeks before the event? "Oh, that's just when the committee finalized the details. These things take time to organize properly." I wanted to call her a liar. I wanted to point out that she'd had months to plan this event and had chosen to announce these fees at the last possible moment, specifically to exclude students like Emma. But I didn't, because Emma was listening from the hallway, and I couldn't let her see me lose control. Instead, I hung up and spent the rest of the evening researching second jobs, calculating how many extra shifts I could pick up, trying to figure out if there was any way to make the money work. But even if I could somehow scrape together $300, it would mean choosing between prom and our rent, between Emma's one perfect night and keeping a roof over our heads. Emma found me at the kitchen table at midnight, surrounded by bills and calculator tape, my laptop open to job search websites. "Mom," she said softly, "please don't." "I can make this work," I insisted. "There has to be a way." She sat down beside me and closed the laptop. "Even if you could, I don't want it. Not like this. Not from them." "Emma, you've earned this." "Have I?" she asked. "Or have I just been fooling myself for 4 years, thinking I could earn something that was never meant for me in the first place?" I looked at my daughter, this incredible young woman who'd worked so hard for so long to prove herself worthy of opportunities that other kids took for granted. And I realized that Linda Blackwood and her committee had accomplished exactly what they'd set out to do. They'd made Emma question her own worth. That's when I got angry. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger that burns itself out quickly, but the cold, calculating kind that builds and focuses and finds a way to win. Over the next few days, I watched Emma try to pretend she didn't care. She threw herself into her final projects, stayed late at the library, picked up extra tutoring sessions. She told her friends she'd decided prom was overrated anyway, that she'd rather spend the money on college expenses. Marcus offered to help with the fees, but Emma politely declined, too proud to accept charity even from someone who genuinely cared about her. But I saw how she looked at the prom posters in the hallways. I noticed her lingering outside groups of girls discussing their dresses and dinner plans. I caught her scrolling through photos from previous year's proms, studying the decorations and the happy faces of students who'd never had to worry about whether they could afford to belong. The breaking point came 2 weeks later, during the academic awards ceremony. Emma was receiving the Mathematics Excellence Award, the English department's highest honor, and the community service recognition for her volunteer work with local elementary schools. As she walked across the stage for the third time that evening, I watched Linda Blackwood lean over to whisper something to Margaret Powell. They both looked at Emma, then at me, and smiled in a way that made my stomach turn. After the ceremony, as families gathered in the lobby for refreshments, Linda approached me with her signature combination of sweetness and poison. "Sarah, I just wanted to tell you how proud you must be of Emma. She's certainly made the most of her opportunities here." "She has," I agreed carefully. "It's such a shame about prom, though. I know how much these events mean to the girls." She paused, tilting her head with mock sympathy. "But I'm sure she'll find other ways to celebrate her time at Westfield. Perhaps something more appropriate to her situation." Something inside me snapped. Not visibly, not dramatically, but completely. "Linda," I said, my voice perfectly calm, "I think you might be surprised by what's appropriate to Emma's situation." She blinked, momentarily taken aback by my tone. "Oh?" "Yes," I smiled, channeling every ounce of grace my mother had tried to teach me. "My daughter is brilliant, kind, hardworking, and destined for extraordinary things. That makes a lot of things appropriate to her situation, including prom." I walked away before she could respond, but I caught the flash of uncertainty in her eyes. Good. Let her wonder what I meant. That night, I sat down at my computer and did something I'd never done before. I wrote a letter. Not to the school, not to the parent committee, but to someone I'd never met but had admired from a distance for years. Someone who'd grown up in circumstances similar to ours and had somehow managed to change not just their own life, but the lives of countless others. I wrote to Jackson Rivers, the actor and philanthropist whose foundation focused on educational opportunities for underprivileged students. He'd graduated from a small public school in Ohio, worked his way through college, and become one of Hollywood's most respected leading men. More importantly, he'd never forgotten where he came from, and his foundation had helped thousands of students attend college, pursue their dreams, and prove that zip codes don't determine destinies. I didn't expect a response. I certainly didn't expect what happened next. But sometimes, when you're fighting for something that matters, the universe decides to fight alongside you. I sealed the letter, addressed it to his foundation's offices in Los Angeles, and dropped it in the mailbox on my way to work the next morning. As I watched it disappear into the postal service system, I made a promise to myself and to Emma. Linda Blackwood and her committee thought they'd won. They thought they'd put us in our place, reminded us of our proper position in their carefully constructed social hierarchy. They thought Emma would quietly accept their judgment, grateful for whatever scraps of belonging they'd allowed her over the past 4 years. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. 3 weeks passed without any response to my letter. Emma had stopped talking about prom entirely, focusing instead on her final exams and college preparation. I watched her bury herself in academics, staying late at the library, volunteering for extra credit projects, anything to avoid the conversations happening around her about dress fittings and dinner reservations. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, while I was folding laundry, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. The area code was 310. Los Angeles. "Is this Sarah Thompson, Emma's mother?" The voice was warm, professional, distinctly masculine. "Yes, this is Sarah. This is Jackson Rivers. I received your letter about Emma's situation." I nearly dropped the phone. Jackson Rivers. The Jackson Rivers was calling my house, talking to me like we were old friends, because of a letter I'd written in desperation 3 weeks ago. "Mr. Rivers, thank you for calling. I honestly didn't expect to hear back. Your letter was beautifully written, Sarah. And Emma's story reminded me of my own high school experience. I know what it feels like to be the outsider, to work twice as hard for half the recognition. For the next 20 minutes, we talked about Emma's achievements, her dreams of studying engineering at MIT, and the systematic way certain families at Westfield had tried to diminish her accomplishments. Jackson listened without interrupting, asking thoughtful questions that showed he understood exactly what we were facing. "Sarah," he said finally, "I'd like to do something about this situation. Would you be open to a rather unconventional solution?" "What do you mean?" "I'm going to be in your area next weekend for a charity event. What if I took Emma to her prom?" The words hung in the air between us. Jackson Rivers, Academy Award nominee, People's Sexiest Man Alive 2 years running, wanted to escort my daughter to her senior prom. Mr. Rivers, that's incredibly generous, but Emma can't afford the additional fees the school imposed." "Leave that to me," he said quietly. "And Sarah, call me Jackson." What followed was the most surreal week of my life. Jackson's assistant, a efficient woman named Claire, called to coordinate details. A dress designer in the city reached out about creating something custom for Emma. A car service contacted me about transportation arrangements. And through it all, Emma remained completely unaware that her entire world was about to change. Struggled with when and how to tell her. Part of me worried she'd be embarrassed, that she'd feel like I'd turned her into a charity case. But another part of me knew this was about more than just one night. This was about showing Linda Blackwood and her committee that their narrow definition of worth and belonging was meaningless in the larger world. Finally, on the Tuesday before prom, I sat Emma down in our living room with 2 cups of tea and a deep breath. "Honey, I need to tell you something about prom." Her face immediately shut down. "Mom, we've been through this. I'm fine staying home." "Actually, you're not staying home. You're going to prom." "I told you I don't want you going into debt for one night." "I'm not going into debt. Someone else is taking care of the fees." She frowned, suspicious. "Who?" "Jackson Rivers." Emma stared at me for a full 30 seconds, her tea growing cold in her hands. "The actor Jackson Rivers?" "Yes." "Mom, what did you do?" I told her about the letter, about the phone call, about Jackson's offer to escort her to prom. I watched her face cycle through disbelief, excitement, panic, and finally, a kind of quiet determination I'd never seen before. "He wants to take me to prom," she said slowly. "He wants to make a point," I corrected, "that you deserve to be there just as much as anyone else." "What if people think it's fake? What if they say I'm just some charity case he's helping?" "Emma," I said firmly, "Jackson Rivers doesn't do anything for publicity. His foundation work is real, his commitment to education is real, and his belief in you is real. Anyone who questions that says more about themselves than about you." That Saturday evening, I watched my daughter transform. The dress designer had created something magical, a midnight blue gown that complemented Emma's dark hair and made her look like royalty. A makeup artist Jackson had arranged came to our house, and when she finished, Emma looked radiant, but still, completely herself. At 6 o'clock, a black SUV pulled up outside our modest duplex. Jackson Rivers stepped out wearing an impeccably tailored tuxedo, carrying a corsage that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. But what struck me most was how nervous he looked, like a teenage boy picking up his date for the first time. Emma answered the door with confidence I'd never seen before. "Mr. Rivers? I'm Emma Thompson. Thank you for doing this." "Please call me Jackson. And Emma, the honor is entirely mine." I watched them pose for photos in our tiny living room, Jackson treating Emma with the same respect he'd show any leading lady. He asked about her college plans, her favorite subjects, her thoughts on sustainable engineering. By the time they left for dinner, they were talking like old friends. The restaurant was elegant but not ostentatious, chosen specifically because Jackson wanted Emma to feel comfortable rather than overwhelmed. He'd researched her interests, discovered her love of Italian food, and made reservations at a place known for authentic cuisine rather than celebrity sightings. Meanwhile, word had somehow leaked about Emma's unexpected date. By the time they arrived at the hotel where prom was being held, a small crowd of photographers and curious onlookers had gathered outside. Jackson handled it perfectly, posing briefly for photos while keeping Emma close and comfortable, making it clear that she was his priority for the evening. Inside the ballroom, the reaction was everything I could have hoped for and more. Linda Blackwood's face went completely white. When Jackson and Emma walked through the doors, Margaret Powell actually dropped her purse. Students stopped dancing to stare, not with judgment or mockery, but with genuine amazement and respect. Jackson didn't just drop Emma off and disappear. He stayed for the entire evening, dancing with her, meeting her friends, charming the teachers, and treating every moment like it mattered. When the prom king and queen were announced, he applauded enthusiastically. When Emma's friend Marcus asked for a photo, Jackson insisted on taking several, making sure everyone felt included. But the moment that mattered most came during the slow dance portion of the evening. As Jackson and Emma swayed to the music, surrounded by her classmates, I watched my daughter's posture change. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted, and, for the first time in months, she looked like she truly believed she belonged exactly where she was. Linda Blackwood made one last attempt at maintaining control. She approached Jackson during a break between songs, her smile plastic and desperate. "Mr. Rivers, how wonderful of you to support our little charity case here. Emma's been such a project for our school community." Jackson's response was delivered with the kind of quiet intensity that made him such a compelling actor. "Mrs. Blackwood, I think you're confused about who the charity case is here. Emma has earned everything she's received through intelligence, hard work, and character. That's more than I can say for some people." He turned away before she could respond, but the message was clear to everyone within earshot. The room's power dynamic had shifted completely. The evening ended with Emma being crowned with an unofficial honor her classmates created on the spot, a recognition for Most Inspiring Student. As she accepted the impromptu award, she gave a brief speech thanking her friends, her teachers, and her unexpected date for believing in her dreams. Jackson drove her home personally, refusing the car service for this final part of the evening. In our driveway, he told Emma something that would stay with her forever. "Emma, I want you to remember tonight not because a celebrity took you to a prom, but because you proved that your worth isn't determined by other people's limitations. You belong wherever your dreams take you, whether that's MIT or NASA or anywhere else you decide to go." 3 months later, Emma graduated as valedictorian. Her acceptance letter to MIT came with a full scholarship, partly based on a recommendation letter Jackson had written highlighting her resilience and character. Linda Blackwood's daughter Sophia was accepted to her safety school. Jackson stayed in touch, not as a celebrity benefactor, but as a genuine mentor and friend. He attended Emma's graduation, celebrated her college acceptance, and continued to remind her that the girl who'd been deemed unworthy of prom was actually destined for extraordinary things. As for the Westfield Mafia, their influence crumbled pretty quickly after prom night. Other parents began questioning their methods. Students started speaking up about exclusionary practices, and the school administration quietly implemented new policies about event fees and accessibility. Emma starts at MIT next month. She's planning to study aerospace engineering with a focus on sustainable space exploration. Her dorm room wall features 2 photos, her high school graduation portrait and a picture from prom night, dancing with Jackson Rivers, but smiling entirely, for herself. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of proving that worth isn't measured by bank accounts or social status, but by character, determination, and the courage to keep believing in yourself even when others don't. Emma learned that lesson at 17, dancing in a ballroom where she'd been told she didn't belong, with a date who saw her true value from 3,000 miles away. And Linda Blackwood? She learned that sometimes the people you try to keep down have friends in higher places than you ever imagined. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.